Alright guys, we gotta talk about Total War Pharaoh Dynasties. Now if you're sitting there wondering, what the hell is Total War Pharaoh Dynasties? Well, you're probably not alone. Total War Pharaoh was the Total War Bronze Age game that no one asked for, but we got anyway. And Dynasties is the second half to the game that was released about a year ago. So, Dynasties has received some praise of late, and these are going to be my own first impressions. I'm Ragnarok Total War, and welcome to the video. We got some stuff to get into. Alright, I fired up this game with the sentiment, can it keep me playing? Can it keep me interested? Can it grab my attention? Short answer is yes and no. Let me explain. First, I'll go through a list of what I've got jotted down here as the pros, and then I'll go over the cons, and then I'll sort of compare them a little bit, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. Again, this is my first impressions. I've played probably less than 20 hours of this, so it's not a super in-depth analysis of the game, but we may get into some of that in the future. But for now, first impressions only. Alright, so pros, you've got an expanded campaign map. It's a beautiful map. There's more factions with a variety of play styles. We've got larger scale battles in terms of unit models on the field at a time. That is, if you're playing on extreme unit scale. You've got fast-paced battles with terrain and weather. There's tradable resources. This isn't necessarily something new. This was added in Troy, but it's still a great feature, and I love it. Family tree has been added to the game. All in all, the game looks great if you're playing with the graphics settings capped out. Alright, the cons. Too many settlements. Presentation. Feels like there's a lot of clutter on the screen a lot of the time. No population. Tiny battle maps. Lack of formations and stances. Diplomacy feels a little stale. And there's no agents, heroes, naval battles. And if I'm being completely honest, I mean, here's the thing. My system is pretty old now. It's somewhat of a fossil. But at the same time, it's a beast for its as old as it is. It's still, you know, should be able to run these games fairly smoothly, especially if the settings are all set really low. And in my opinion, the game runs like shit. Like, it runs great, runs like butter when not much is happening, but when you start to see a lot of units on the field, the game starts to run like shit. And in the end turns as well, you can kind of see that. So those are the cons. Let's sort of talk about things in a little bit more detail. So we'll compare some of the pros and cons here a little bit. We've got an expanded map, so we've got the full Bronze Age experience finally, which is fantastic. Total War has never visited this time period, so it's certainly a great time to explore. But like I said, there's too many settlements, and the settlements are all, for the most part, just cookie cutter, you know, copy paste the settlements. And I feel like the game would be better for it if you got rid of like half of the settlements. And you know, this is something that I've wanted to see in Total War for a while. Like, the game feels like you're just leapfrogging from settlement to settlement to settlement, and I don't think it's like a true representation of what armies moving across these vast terrains, especially in ancient times. The thing is, with so many settlements in the game, it just becomes a bit of a slog, and it promotes the overuse of the auto-resolve button, which really, if you're playing Total War for the essence of Total War, you should never need to use the auto-resolve, because you're playing these games for the battles, aren't you? Like, isn't that the whole point of these games? I mean, like, the management overall campaign management and everything is fun, it's great and everything, but like the heart of the game is the battles. And you create like all of these cookie cutter settlements, like the minor settlements. I feel like if you fought one minor settlement battle, you've essentially fought them all. Like they just, feel very same-ish. And what they added, like, what, 160 settlements to the game, and there was already what, like, over 100. So you're looking at like 200, 300 plus settlements. And for myself personally, it just, at a certain point, it becomes a bit of a deterrent. You show up at a minor settlement battle, the auto resolve isn't giving you great odds, and it's like, do I really want to fight this battle that I've fought 100 times already, or do I want to just turn off the game and call it a night? You know what I mean? You get me? Anyway, all right, so let's move on. Beautiful map, looks gorgeous, but you've got this beautiful map coated with all this clutter. And I mean, maybe this is just a personal thing, an aesthetic thing. But for me, like, I feel like there's gotta be a better way to present these games. That why does everything have to look so gamey? Like, why can't the icons and things that you're clicking on the campaign map, why can't they blend into the scenery more organically, that actually feel like a representation of your faction and the things that you're building and stuff? I just... I'm not a game designer, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But I feel like all this clutter on the screen, it just drives me nuts. And I feel like there's got to be a better way to do this. And I mean, the same goes through for the battles, but at least with the battles, you can sort of manage the graphic settings and you can sort of dumb that stuff down a little bit. But still, it's, it's not perfect. But anyway. All right, so you've got more factions and a variety of playstyles, but at the same time you have no true representation of population. And what would make all of these different factions really, really interesting is if you added actual populations with cultures and religions in which the workforces and armies and garrisons are drawn from, and have like a direct relation to the amount of food you're producing as to how fertile they are and how much they reproduce. Like, there's so much you could do with like a population mechanic, and it would make the game infinitely more interesting. But instead, everything gets represented by these ridiculous power bars and these I don't know, these absurd, I mean, I guess it's not absurd, but like, you workforce numbers and things like that. It's just like anyway, leave it at that. We've got larger scale battles in terms of the amount of unit models. I think the armies on Extreme probably average around 3,000 units per 20 stack, give or take a couple of hundred. So if maximum armies are 4 versus 4, so you're looking at 12,000 versus 12,000, which is fantastic. I love it. This is why I play Total War, to be honest. Is I love these large scale battles, and I can't wait for the day where they actually give us command of like even bigger armies, like 80 stacks instead of just 40 stacks. But a guy can dream, right? But the problem is the maps are tiny. You've got these massive armies and these tiddly-wink tiny battles that your troops can cover so fast. Everybody's so fast, which is fine. I'm kind of digging the faster gameplay. I don't know how true of a representation it is to historical battles of the time, the movement speeds and things like that, but to a certain extent I'm digging the fast gameplay. It's just you're really constricted with these teeny tiny boxes, and your choices as to deployment and the positioning of your reinforcements and things like that, and none of it really matters because the maps are so small. It's just like who can get the most units on the field and pin their enemy into place, kind of thing, and just flank them a little bit or whatever, and it's GG. But yeah, I would love to see larger maps for these battles. I think it's desperately needed in Total War, and if Total War wants to visit some of the places that it's rumored to want to visit, then we're gonna need larger battle maps. Anyway, just one guy's opinion. Alright, so we've got tradable resources added to the game, but at the same time, diplomacy just feels a bit stale. Like, it just strikes me as odd that you can instantly negotiate with any faction in the ancient world when, like, you know, it would take months to travel to, like, send emissaries back and forth. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely a better way to do the diplomacy to make it more engaging, and I mean, diplomacy hasn't really changed fundamentally in Total War for like quite a while. I know they've added sort of different bits and pieces, but I mean, it's essentially the same system, and I just feel like this, you know, needs a, I hate the word overhaul, but like it needs to be freshened up, I think, in my humble opinion. We've also got the family tree, which is awesome. I think every Total War needs this. However, it just doesn't seem like much is happening here. That's not to say that maybe more will be added, or maybe I just haven't gotten that far in the game yet. But yeah, it just seems a little dull. And yeah, game looks great when you've got the settings all capped out and everything, but myself playing on an older PC, I have to sort of dumb the settings down a bit so it doesn't look as great, but at the same time, like I said, it sort of runs like shit. And I mean, this is sort of like a common thread with the Total War games. Once you reach a certain size for battles, like even, you know, on some of the best systems, you'll still, the game will still chug and still have a hard time. So I think definitely something that I'd love to see Creative Assembly invest in is just, you know, optimization and just making the battles more fluid and able to handle larger scale battles. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Have you guys tried it? Are you know, staying away from this one, just waiting for the next Total War? What do you guys think? We're going to do a live stream here very soon. I think probably Monday, Tuesday. We'll do like a long stream and just sink our teeth into the game a little bit more. But to summarize, like, what I really would love to see Creative Assembly focus on for the next historical battle, and if they really want to bring historical Total War back from the dead, it's gotta start with the battles. There are some bright spots in Pharaoh Dynasty, certainly, but there's no shortage of problems, and these are problems that Creative Assembly is sort of like dragging along with them. Even, you know, the Warhammer games are great, but the additional mechanics, the magic, and the abilities kind of glosses over some of the core fundamental problems with the engine and the way that the units interact with one another and just the physics of the game. And this is something that we're going to look into in a lot greater depth in the future, but for now, that's all I got for you guys. Have a great day. Ragnarok out.
If we're gonna turn this company around, we gotta start cutting the crust off this shit sandwich. Fire in a hole, everybody! Come on, work!